So I have a question for you, man. Like, or a confession actually. I have a confession for you. When I post something on Instagram, right? If I post something on Instagram or Facebook or something, especially when it's like a cool picture of me or something, I immediately, maybe an hour later, I kind of have to like review myself. I kind of sit back and just reflect and think, all right, so what am I missing? Like, is there any validation that I need that I'm not getting? I'm not managing to get in a healthy way. Maybe I need to talk to my girlfriend. Maybe I need to talk to some of my friends. Try to get some normal human validation rather than why am I expecting it from strangers or from like acquaintances? Do you ever get that?
Yeah, that's a crazy question. So let's take it at the surface level. At surface level, what you're asking is, should you sense check a post that goes out online? And to that, I'd
Yeah.
say yes. Okay, because
Okay.
you could post something, you could think it's quite cool, you could think you're looking good. You haven't. What I see is that you haven't looked at the bigger picture. You could have missed something in the bigger picture. When you're focused in on details, you write the caption, you pick the picture, you pick the
Yeah.
filter. You're kind of involved in the details, but you don't look back. And it could take a girlfriend or a wife to say, "Hey, F, you kind of look a little bit douchey there." Like, you know, you're showing off. It's a bit flashy. There could be kind of some notes, right?
Yeah.
Or there could be something that you didn't realize. And then the other thing, that's the surface level. Should you check it? Yes, like definitely. I think sometimes you compose something and I think what you said half an hour later, yeah, I get that feeling like you look at the post and you're like, that's not as cool as I remember I posted 10
Yeah.
minutes ago,
Yeah.
or that's
Yeah.
not the impact. And sometimes like if you don't get a load of likes initially, that kind of doesn't feel amazing, and then you can start
Yeah.
questioning it even if you
I
know
need my
it's
dopamine rush.
yeah, for sure. So that surface level you should, but then I think the other thing that you're saying is, why am I posting it? What's the
Exactly.
purpose of me posting it? And
Yes.
that's a much bigger question that you could talk about for an hour. And I don't know if there's I have that same exact thing in my mind, like continuously,
Yeah.
and it changes from time to time. I think when I feel like this is my, I'll use. It's kind of like if we talk about it like the dopamine here. When I'm not feeling confident and I feel like I need some boost, then I might post like a nice holiday, a picture where I think I look good or whatever, and then I know I'm going to get likes and attention and people say hello.
Yeah.
But then when I feel confident, then I don't typically post because I know I'm happy and I don't really need
Yeah.
validation, and
Exactly.
I typically feel like that most of the time. So my total Instagram posts are like under 15, so somewhere
Yeah,
between
I'd
like
say
10 and
about the
15
same.
posts.
Yeah.
So I'm not a mass poster, but when I do post, it's typically, I just thought about it now. It's not a conscious thing. I just think I typically post when I'm bored and I need some
Yeah,
dopamine
just
hit,
some
and
dopamine hit,
it's
a bit of validation, a bit of like, hey, you're cool. Like, kind
yeah,
of see yourself through someone else's eyes, kind of thing. It's
yeah.
in a weird, yeah.
And it's a way, and this is a bit honest, but it's a way of like flexing slightly. So
100%.
sometimes you just want to flex and you want, and I don't know if that's gross or not. I think like the way I feel about most things is moderation. So as
Yeah.
long as it's moderation and don't infringe on other people too much. So as long as you're not, it shouldn't make anyone else feel bad. Sometimes that can happen, but yeah. No, the question is, should you be posting? I'm not sure. I think if you don't take it too seriously, and you
Yeah.
can use it as a good way to bank memories, update friends and family.
Yeah. About where where
Well,
you've been, what you've been up to, particularly when it's like something memorable happened. Like, I went on a nice holiday. I saw this beautiful place, on a mountaintop, on a beach, on a whatever.
yeah, and that's the thing, and I think you've kind of hit that on the head as well. Like, these social media, if we just take it as a bigger picture, they're such amazing tools and useful tools to keep connected.
Yeah.
This show wouldn't exist without them. That's the first thing I want to say.
100%.
Me and you couldn't be as close as we are. We might be able to write letters. We might be able to do other things, telephone calls. It's not the same. It's
My
not the
dear
same
friend
seeing
S.
Yeah, my dear friend F. How are you? Times
The
are very
weather has
different
been-
here in the bleep. But you know, this show wouldn't exist. So I think as tools, they're super powerful. As, you know, civilized people as you and I are, I think we can see the pitfalls and the scary parts of it, and we can try and stay away and moderate ourselves as much as possible. And I
Yeah.
think we have a good support system that moderates us, you know, if we can't, and I'm sure, you know, we're adults and we can do that just fine right now.
Yeah.
But my concern is, you know, for those younger people who have just grown up, only knowing this, and then
It's a different equation.
it's a minefield. The parents aren't capable of like understanding the world these children are in.
Yeah.
And the first thing to do is protect children. I think that's always the key. And that's what I got out of this, is that we need to build in protection for children using social media.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Hello and welcome to the FFS show. This is your host S.
And I am Mark Zuckerberg. Kidding.
What's up,
Allegedly.
F? How's it going?
Good. How are you, man?
What a show we have this week. This week is S is for The Social Dilemma. We're going to do a deep dive on the Netflix documentary. If any of you have watched it, this is going to be a great episode to watch. If you haven't watched it and you're not going to, you don't need to. We're going to dump into it. There's nothing that you've missed that we're going to be talking about. If you're going to listen to this and you are going to watch it, we will warn you there are spoilers. So go and watch it and come back to this episode. But yeah, really looking forward to it. It's going to be a banging show.
Can't wait.
This week's episode is not sponsored by Russian bot YouTube comments.
How was your happy watching? I'm really excited to hear about the show. A lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of my friends recommended to watch it, so I wanted to know if it's worth watching.
I would say it is worth watching. I think for viewers out there, if you haven't seen it and you're going to, I would suggest watching the show before coming back to this episode. I would give it a 6 out of 10, and I'll explain why more in the show.
Fair.
But yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. This won't be the only podcast that's about the social dilemma. I've seen maybe 15 other podcasts, so hopefully we can give the folks a nice twist on the show.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a banger of the show.
So who made the documentary? Who made the social dilemma?
So the documentary was directed by someone called Jeff Orlovsky, and we can check the saying for that. But it was actually released in the end of January 2020. So a lot of people may have thought that all the hype has just come out now when it was released on Netflix, but it was actually released for the Sundance Film Festival back in January. And from what I can see from the Wikipedia page and looking on the Sundance, it didn't win any awards. So in terms of filmmaking, and I think if you do watch it, and for folks who have watched it, it's not the most amazingly arty film that you would expect, like a Sundance Film Award.
Like a Sundance participant, yeah.
Sure. So I don't think it was ever trying to win an award. It seems like I'd like to see what the budget was for it, because seems like a huge budget. But it was it's essentially a docu-fiction. is the way I would describe it, an expose
Okay.
of techniques used by big data to increase engagement in ways that are not necessarily the best interest for mankind. It has people who worked for big tech companies that were working specifically in these algorithms and search functions and like buttons and tagging in Facebook pictures. And it's a PG-13, so the audience is for, parental guidance above the age of 13. And it's I don't know what else to say about it. It's a docu.
It's interesting. It's interesting that they have a kind of disgruntled. Well, I don't want to say disgruntled.
Allegedly disgruntled.
Maybe they left on good terms, but ex-employees who kind of spill the tea on the what's happening behind the scenes, what kind of major decisions. Is a lot of focus on these former employees, or are they just a backdrop?
Yeah, I would say no. The main focus is 50% of them would be sort of these former employees talking about the techniques used. Some of those are talking directly to the camera as part of the documentary. Some of them are clips from conferences, from TED Talks. Specifically, Chamath was one of the Facebook, he was in charge of increasing engagement under Facebook. And he talks about how he used, stuff that they knew that wasn't necessarily in the best interest of the user, but because it generated more activity and more, ad revenue, they would go and push after that. So it is a little bit damning in terms of some of the techniques used, but again, it's nothing. One of the key things I would say, it's nothing that we didn't know already. It's It's putting it very much to the forefront of your mind, and and one of my critiques, and we'll go later about some of my critiques and some of how it was taken by the public, is that some of it's nothing that's revolutionary, but it does certainly have some really good thinking points.
So, obviously it generated a lot of buzz. A lot of my friends are talking about it. I'm sure a lot of your friends are talking about it.
I have no friends.
But what are critics saying? What are the general population saying? Have you got any nice reviews for us?
Yeah, so let's do the standard IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. IMDb gave it a 7.9 for a documentary. That's very, very good. 87% Rotten Tomatoes, again, extremely good. So in terms of and Google, 97% liked the movie. So in terms of general public, I think it was received really, really well. You can talk anywhere between 80 and 90% of people really enjoyed it, which for any entertainment show, if we could get 80, 90% approval ratings, we'd be really happy. So
that would be amazing, yeah.
In terms of a is it a Netflix smash? It's certainly a Netflix smash. We're talking about it. It seems like every other podcast is talking about it. So it's a huge smash in terms of viewership. I don't think Netflix actually shows the numbers of views. Any of it shows
I don't think so.
But it's from the amount of buzz and the waves that it's given. It's been a huge smash, it seems. Even
Water
the financial
cooler talk.
Yeah, it's certainly water cooler. The Financial Times review said that it carefully details the skyrocketing levels of depression among children and teenagers. The flat earthers, the white supremacists, the genocide in Myanmar, the COVID misinformation, and the imperiling of objective truth and social disintegration. So, and even from that list, you can really see that the show tackles a lot of really, really big, important topics now.
It's interesting they mention the Myanmar stuff, because that's one of the stuff I read about in the build up to our show, to this episode. And that is terrifying. The fact that apparently a lot of posts were tagged as kind of hate speech in the build up to all of the nasty stuff they did, but there was a lot of passivity, I suppose, just what's gonna happen kind of response.
And this is, maybe we can talk about that. So one way that we would typically look at it is how it affects the Western countries. But it's even more scary when we look at third world and developing countries
Yes.
that are more volatile, and leadership can fall into inconspicuous people, if we just put it like that.
Yeah.
So the way that these hateful speeches can be reverberated. So if you start searching when you start delving into something, the way the algorithm works is it picks up a slight interest. So if there's an inclination towards a certain type of hatred, then the algorithm is just going to give you more and more of that hatred. And it intensifies the extreme. That's where the polarization starts.
Yeah.
So you could be 50% aligned with your neighbor. As soon as you start creeping towards, if we say we're both in the center, one center left and one center right, the algorithm is more likely to start giving you more and more extreme topics because they're more thrilling, they're more exciting. So it's going to start dragging these two people who are very close to the center further and further to polarities. And that's one of the really big dangers. And when you look at third world countries, it's very, very easy for propaganda to spread like wildfire.
Yeah, especially since, like, when you talk about these third world countries, I also read about how, like, in countries that have a lot of dialects, a lot of different languages, they don't even have proper moderation. At least at the time of the Myanmar problems, they still didn't. They didn't cover at that time, back in 2017 probably. They didn't cover all of the languages and dialects where they could censor certain hate speech or have proper supervision over what's happening, which is kind of it creates dangers on its own, particularly when you're talking about countries that have so many different languages and dialects spoken in it, where maybe Facebook corporations might focus on the most common 2 or 3, or the most spoken 2 or 3, and just kind of not really consider all the smaller ones.
Yeah, and it's that polarization which I think is it's taking something from mild and then bombarding you with that information until it gets worse, and that's the really scary thing.
Yeah.
So the Los Angeles Times Kevin Cross states, while most people are aware they're being mined for data while on these sites, few realize how deep the probe goes. If you think the trade-off is merely getting targeted ads for your favorite sneakers, you are in for a big shock. And I think that's a good way of thinking about it. It's not just surface level things that the algorithm are picking up on. It picks up on how long even if there's a long website, is how long you pause on a certain part of the website, how long you hover over an item, how long it takes for you to read it. So it's picking up a model of your behaviors, and ultimately what it wants to do is predict your next steps. If it can predict your next steps, then it can target specific things for you. And the problem at the moment is, in the current state, it wants to target engagement, and it doesn't moderate whether that's good engagement, bad engagement, whether that's helpful to your life or not helpful for your life.
Kind of the old adage of any press is good press. So kind of any engagement is good engagement, even if you're in it for all the toxic reasons. Just as long as we've got your eyeballs, then we don't care.
And a lot of other people are complicit in this. The creators on the platform, they'll use clickbait.
Yeah.
Newspapers have been doing clickbait before clickbait was a word.
Oh yeah.
For a very long time. Propaganda through media has always been a tool used by governments and lobbyists. So the final critic that I've pulled up here is something that was really made me think, and it kind of sort of explained how I felt about the documentary.
Okay.
And this is from the NME. So its intentions are good, but Netflix doc The Social Dilemma is as manipulative as Facebook.
Ooh.
According to the Netflix documentary, fake news spreads 6 times faster than real news. So keen are social media's algorithms to take advantage of the appetite for scandal and conspiracy. It's a powerful and timely investigation, but you are left wishing that the film hadn't fallen foul of its own demons. There's blatant and blunt emotional manipulation aplenty with its 90-odd minutes, in the forms of scenes of scripted drama, with scenes of a fictional family who descend from inability to eat dinner without thumbing themselves dysfunctional
into selfie comment depression, Facebook X-stalking, and all-out political rebellion.
Wow.
You can see the justification. The documentary's primary targets, the people that really wants to wake from their social media stupor, are the ones who are generally more susceptible to suggestion, advertising, and thought control. So why not play Facebook at its own game, pulling the easily led viewers' emotional strings with scenes of illustrative drama? In a genre where straying away from the facts can be death of a doc, such films generally dramatize real-life events. By going one step further and inventing an entirely fictional plot to illustrate its key points, the social dilemma ventures into the world of docufiction and undermines its own authority.
That's, yeah. So I take it from the review, that last one, they're criticizing the documentary for being a bit too sensationalist, a bit too over-dramatic, and kind of using the same types of propaganda that the platforms themselves use to social engineer you or to brainwash you. So is it counterproductive to use the same method that the platforms use to kind of unplug you from it, or is it maybe it's the only thing that works because our brains are wired that way? So the only way that you can get me to realize, if I'm an average person, get me to realize how dangerous they are is to use kind of this sensationalist methodology.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think from a initial standpoint, to get the topic out there and to get people to reflect on it, this is fine. And you can see 90%, 80 to 90% of viewers like it. It's really highly rated. It's got a lot of buzz. It has a lot of people speaking about it. It used it in full effect and it worked. Now, another few reviews and podcasts I've listened to is that the problem with this documentary is it doesn't give you many solutions. So the next step, so I feel like it's done great to put this into the public eye, to put more eyes and more people looking at this topic, which is great. But what are the next steps to make it a safer place? And going back to the first review where it says that we need to make it safer for children and younger people. I think for me, that's one of the key things about it.
Yeah. So we got an idea about how the general public viewed this documentary, about how critics thought about it. But what did you think about it? What did you think about the documentary, and how did that change your opinion on social media, on these tech companies?
So I'll give you my first, how I felt about it before the documentary and now how I feel about it. Before the documentary, I always knew if I searched a product, for example, I was looking at engagement rings for my now wife.
Okay.
And for 3 months, I was getting engagement advertisements on all platforms.
Yeah.
So, that side of it was always quite clear and quite blatant. What I didn't realize was the nuances of what the algorithm can pick up and the scope of it and how large it can be. Whether that's, political leanings, the articles I read, the YouTube videos I read. So now that's made me quite self-reflective about what content I want to feed myself. Content is like nutrition in a way now. You need to not eat fast food and start eating some good food. The problem with the internet is the worst thing is when you start eating a little bit of fast food, it's going to give you every piece of fast food it can throw at you, hoping you're going to take it. So me personally, I've done a lot of self-reflection. I feel that now, once I've watched it, I want to limit the amount of social media usage that I have. I feel like it's not the most productive way to spend my time.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I want to look at is stuff that I want it to show me. So I'm taking ownership of the algorithm. I'm the boss of the algorithm. If I want to look at surfing, skiing, and charities, the algorithm is going to give me surfing, skiing, maybe snowboarding, and charities.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm continuously looking at content that is, I don't know what the right word is, but content that's not valuable to my life, that's entertainment, the equivalent of fast food. And we can bleep the names out, but like Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, any of these people who are like overly politicized fixtures, even Andrew Schultz, right, who's a comedian, but they have these leanings towards the left or the right.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be on my account, if that makes sense. And you know, having said that, I do agree that the show was slightly over dramatized. There was a few comments that I thought that were not very well backed up. So one of them, this was from a professor from Harvard, and she said, these tech companies are selling human souls. And that was something that I didn't really, I could understand sort of what she's talking about. And this is, you know, something that we've spoken about before. And you had a question about, you know, in terms of the supply chain, where are we on that supply chain?
Yeah. Because we're the ones kind of giving them all the data that they need, that they're selling to advertisers. So does that make us, are we laborers? Are we performing the labor for them, or are we the raw material for them that they extract? And what do you think we are? Which of these two?
Yeah, and that was something that was really well presented in the documentary. And one of the quotes that I picked up was, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. So when you look at free to use platforms, in every sense, you are the product here. So you are the thing that's being sold. Yeah. Whether it's your human soul or whether it's just your purchasing and your attention, that's something that really is up to you.
Yeah.
But for some people, I guess what she was trying to say is that some people are on their phone, on the internet for 6 to 10 hours a day, on, you know, playing games up to 12 to 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
So they're taking their whole soul is going into this monitor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't think that's the majority. I think potentially it could be getting worse and worse in younger generations. And that's what I really am worried about. And my biggest takeaway is, I'm not a parent yet. I hope to be in the next few years. My wife and I will think about it. But as a parent, how am I going to navigate this world with my kids? And,
that's so tricky.
You know, who's ultimately responsible for the safety of children?
Yeah.
Think of the children. Won't somebody please think of the children?
So I'm actually going to put this back to you, F. Who do you think is responsible for, specifically when we're looking at young users? And something that was in the news this week was as a young girl who was 14 years old who unfortunately took her own life, and it was found that her social media and her internet history was full of suicide posts, really graphic images, to the point that the policemen and the social workers couldn't even watch the phone. Ooh. So such a small young mind, 14 years old,
to be exposed to all that. Yeah.
Exposed to such graphic imagery. Never in the history of time has a 14-year-old been able to see such a thing, unless it's been a time of war, it's quite sad and sickening. So how do we protect our, really trauma for everyone and her family and for everyone involved? Even for me reading it affects me and it hurts me.
Yeah.
So, you know, who do you think is responsible ultimately for the protection of our kids? Not only in just the big things like that, but also from the smaller things, you know, being tracked and having ultimate freedom.
You can't really, it's not fair, it's not reasonable, it's not even efficient to like just say that one entity should be responsible for these things. I think all these platforms can do a lot more, for starters, to maintain our safety as users, or particularly, most importantly,
kids.
But I also think parents should be a bit more aware about how these things are being used, about all of the dangers that exist, and to try to protect their own children from all the different risks or dangers they could encounter. I think government regulation is very important as well. And it's like, if there is ever a thing like that I think an international body, like I think all countries should get together and kind of make out certain international laws, like kind of the common denominators for basic safety. And then I suppose each country can kind of like pick their own, so as to not enforce whatever onto other countries, but like their own rules. But I think, yeah, it should
It's
be
like
a
an
collaborative.
understood international human rights, right?
Yeah,
We have international human rights, and it should be something the UN
Absolutely.
look after.
Yeah.
And that's we're not saying that should be really strict regulation. We're talking about very, very basic, protecting it from the dark, specifically children,
Exactly.
but also content that's
Yeah.
extremely dark
Yeah.
that shouldn't be available. And illegal, quite frankly,
Yeah.
a lot of the time. Illegal, false, defamation, propaganda, extremism. It's a lot of illegal behavior. I couldn't agree more. As a parent, I think, a lot of accountability starts there. The problem is not everyone has an accountable parent or a responsible parent.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I feel like government needs to give big data parameters that they need to stay within. Something that I was thinking about, is a kid who is allowed to roam free the streets of London, New York, Dubai on their own, the parents would be arrested, right? Imagine letting the kid 24 hours roam through the city streets, converse with whoever they would like to converse with, go see what they want to see. That parent would be in serious trouble in most Western societies.
Absolutely.
However, regulation on the internet, there's scarier stuff on the internet than there is in most city streets. There's scarier people. It's international, and there is no restrictions. So I feel like government need to, under the age of 16, under the age of 18, depending on what the country is, there needs to be strict regulation on what children can be exposed to in terms of content and people. And I think that's a really key thing. In the UK, we have a watershed, and what that means is before 9 p.m. on television, you can't show graphic scenes of violence, sexual nudity, or swearing. And that sort of, although that's an extremely simple example, that could be the starting blocks of a very simple but effective government regulation.
I mean, there's obviously a bit more challenges, I suppose, with the internet rather than like just a one-way traffic of broadcast television. But I mean, something along those lines of like bare minimum. I think maybe children, but I guess maybe that creates its own. I was gonna say, like, if children are registered as children on the internet, and it would give them like automatic, like, children can only converse with children or with their family once it's been confirmed that these are my parents, these are my siblings, these are my uncles, aunties, grandparents, whatever. But then again, kind of me is also thinking, one, that could, like, if children are flagged as children, their IP or whatever, then maybe that creates its own kind of challenges for the future that we can't really conceptualize right now, number one. And number two, how much would that be infringing on people's privacy or their, for them to have to identify themselves in order to browse? It's so tricky, man. Like, it's...
Yeah, well, it's just something to say. Already, they, to use any social media, you have to give your date of birth. True. So that information is already there. I don't think it necessarily needs to be flagged to the wide world. But it's a really interesting topic. What government regulations would you put in to protect people? And listeners, we want to hear what you would do. How did you find the podcast? How did you find the documentary if you watched it? What are some things that we could do to protect our future children and generations from some of the pitfalls and from extremism and from discontent? We'd love to hear from you. Our social media is, as always, in the description.
Please hit us up. Give us some tweets. Give us some messages. We need the brightest minds of the FFS fandom to give us some of their...
Yeah. Speaking of tweets and comments that we've received a suggestion from one of our fan base, right?
Yeah. Our friend Gigi gave us a request. So after last week's football episode, he wanted us to kind of talk about our favorite moments of the week. So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, this sounds like we've got a bit of a bonus F is for football this week.
Another one.
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding,
ding.
ding, ding, ding. Okay, so best of the week, top 3. My top 3 is going to be all penalty related action.
There were like way more than 3 penalties this weekend. So yeah,
I believe in
That's,
24 matches, 21 penalties in this Premier League season, if you can believe that. So the VAR has been a huge topic of discussion. We'll start with the least contentious to the most contentious of the penalties. So
Okay.
my first of the top 3 is the Manchester City capitulation.
Ding, 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 ding.
Is the first of my top 3 is Manchester City. They conceded 3 penalties in one match against Leicester City.
Ooh.
Rodri,
That's insane.
Mendy, and Kyle Walker. Did you watch the match, F? I thought all
I
3
couldn't believe it.
penalties were the correct decision. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And they
can't really-
they were sloppy. They were almost identical.
And
it was.
I was just about to say they were so similar.
I thought
which
when I
is
was
hilarious.
watching the highlights, because I can't watch every match here being in a different time zone to the Premier League, but I thought they was repeating the same clip for the first and the third penalty. I was like, what was going on? So getting in the wrong side, a little shirt tug and a clash of legs. It seemed the same thing all
Yeah.
3 times. I don't know what how could that be blamed? Like, what do you think's the cause of that? I'll tell you what I think after.
All right, so I'm so glad you asked because I was about to intervene and say I probably my favorite football writer. He writes for the Guardian. His name is Jonathan Wilson, and he kind of speculated on like why there are more penalties happening right now, and he kind of said, well, one, with the lack of fans, I think the pace of the game is actually quite faster, and teams more and more are kind of like pushing their defensive line forward, especially the big teams. So you kind of end up in a situation where always to counterattack these possession-heavy teams is to kind of try to get a man running in behind with a over-the-top ball and to try to beat the offside trap that they all sort of rely on. And that's essentially what happened with more or less all 3 penalties. Someone who actually managed to beat the offside trap, like catch the defensive line off guard and be through on goal, and then as an instinctive reaction, the defender would have to, pull him down or push him or...
Okay, so let's take your example and then, the players got in behind. Now, in terms of Manchester City, why this happened 3 times, and we could say a similar thing about Manchester United, the players just don't look fit. They've come back this season. They look even more tired than they did last season. And
They didn't have a summer.
They didn't have a summer, but a lot of people are asking why the 2 Manchester clubs look more fatigued than the other clubs, because they could have rested a lot more players. United lost 3 semi-finals last year. There was 2 to 3 weeks in between the game. Why aren't they fit? Is that Pep and Ollie's fault?
Hard to say. I don't know. Would you say they were in your observation, were they more unfit as compared to the rest of the Premier League?
Absolutely. So going into my second moment of the week, Manchester United's last-minute drama. Again, another penalty
Oh my God.
in the dying seconds. Again, like I said with Man City, Manchester United don't look fit. Last week, they didn't look fit against Crystal Palace. They got thumped. This week, we got thumped again, but we took all 3 points. That was... We could have lost 6-2. I think the man of the match was the woodwork, apparently, for Manchester United.
Oh, I thought it might be the VAR.
Yeah, the woodwork and the VAR. It could have been 6-2 to Brighton, and they deserved at least a point, if not all 3. I do think, again, this one wasn't as controversial because it was such an unnatural hand position. So Mbappe from Brighton, who scored a goal in the first half to give Brighton a goal, he, in the very last minute, it was almost the last kick of the game, Maguire in the penalty box that comes from a corner, Mbappe gives him, there's way too much space between Maguire and Mbappe to close the space, he reaches up and puts his arm towards Maguire's head and the ball, and then the ball hits Maguire's head and bounces off his arm. It was so stupid. He put his arm right to the ball, and it was a clear penalty with VAR. But it was so lucky for Manchester United. Again, Bruno Fernandes, what a penalty kick taker that guy is. I don't think he's ever missed a penalty kick in his career, which is insane.
Really?
Yeah. 100% record.
Do you think it's that little skip, that little jump he does right
Well,
before
sometimes
taking the kick?
sometimes he didn't actually do a skip in his last penalty. This one he did a really short version of the skip, but it's also his accuracy and his confidence. He just puts it in the corner with such pace, and it just must be just a heart of steel. What a little.
Yeah, you need a lot of courage.
Yeah, he's been the only positive thing for United for a long time. But yeah, they didn't look like they could. They didn't look like they had the energy, same as Manchester City. They looked poor. Man City have gone and bought 2 more players since that result. United haven't bought anyone. As we're talking right now, Sancho doesn't look like he's imminent. There looks like there might be one final bid, but it seems like there's some distance between what Borussia want and what United are willing to spend. I would be really, really concerned for Manchester United if they don't buy anyone. My final penalty, which was the most ludicrous decision I've ever seen on a football pitch, is Tottenham versus Newcastle in the 93rd minute, penalty awarded for a handball, which was, quite frankly, the most absurd handball I've ever seen given in football. If you haven't seen the clip yet, have you?
No.
Okay, well let's get it up and then you can react to it in live time. And I'll try and do some of the live commentary. So the ball comes in to the back post. Dyer isn't even looking at the ball. He's jumped up.
It's behind him.
Carroll has headed it from about 3 inches from Dyer's arm. It's not going towards the goal. It's about, as far out as you can be. And they've given a penalty. And Mourinho's reaction is palpable. He just leaves straight away, walks down, leaves the way, steps up and puts the penalty in the way. Takes 2 points away from Tottenham. Ridiculous. What a ridiculous. And I think even Klopp mentioned it was a crazy rule. Even the Premier League coaches don't want it. The referees don't want it. No one wants it. Ridiculous.
I really, it came from behind him. He wasn't even facing the ball.
Wasn't looking at it. Just unbelievable.
Wow. I mean, and here I thought the United win was the heist of the century.
No, it was Newcastle's late equaliser.
I can just imagine some soft jazz playing, kind of like Ocean's 11 music. Dun, 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 dun. Here's the plan. I head the ball into his hand with his back turned behind my back, and next thing you know, it's insane, man.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I was so disappointed, as you know from last week's episode, for the way it was given against Manchester United. I don't feel so bad now that I've seen this. I don't feel so bad. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But this is just 10 times worse.
So let me give you my top 3 for this week. Top moments for this week. Number 1 of the most beautiful goals I've ever seen in a long time was Vardy's backheel goal against Manchester City.
Beauty.
Amazing technique. He caught his marker off guard. He caught the keeper off guard. He caught me off guard. And I was just watching it from the screen. I was like, wait, how did that go in?
He caught himself off guard. He looked surprised. Did you see his reaction?
Yeah.
He looked. He said, "Did that really happen?" And he's.
Did that happen? Yeah. Because it's 9 times out of 10 you mess that up. With the speed of the cross coming in, and the pressure and the speed of your own run. Props to Jamie Vardy, doing it big. Number 2, just because you gotta love the drama. Not really a football related incident, but the Klopp and Roy Keane exchange kind of cracked me up. Just 2 strong characters, two big personalities. Kind of the tension. I kind of got goosebumps when Klopp was kind of asking, wait, was he talking about our match? And yeah, it was crazy. And just to remember, like, who Roy Keane actually is. Like, I wouldn't have the guts to speak to Roy Keane like that, even if he dissed me.
So what was actually said?
I think Roy Keane said that the match was sloppy. I think he said that Liverpool's defense was sloppy during the match, and Klopp took that as a personal offense, apparently.
So yeah, I did actually watch a little bit of that, and what I would take from it was the goal for Arsenal was unbelievably sloppy from Liverpool. The defence was dragged out of position. Yeah. Robertson, I don't know what he was thinking. It was basically an assist. And the strike was terrible. It was just a shambles of a goal. So Roy Keane saying it was sloppy defence, he has a good point. Klopp, obviously, it was a great performance other than that 10 seconds. So for you to pick up the
especially from Robertson,
to use that word. But I knew as soon as Robertson did that, I turned around to my friend who was a Liverpool fan. I said, he's going to want to score. He's going to want to either assist or score.
He's going to make up for it. Yeah.
And he did. He did. He scored a goal, the third goal, I believe.
Mad respect. And of course, the craziest thing that happened this week, Chelsea falling behind 3 goals against West Brom and then getting 3 back in the second half. Everyone was talking about all the new signings, Havertz, Werner, who's gonna try to rescue the game. But it turned out to be the homegrown boys. It had to be Hudson-Odoi, Mason Mount, and Tammy Abraham, who scored the third one. Yeah, I think it was those 3. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, Mount's goal was ridiculous. What a strike that was. He's turning out to be a player, isn't he?
He is. He's amazing, and I'm so excited to see like what once him and Havertz kind of develop better chemistry and understanding together. I think they can be such a insanely talented midfield partnership. They've got the work rate, they've got the technique, selflessness, everything really. And with Kante behind them, like that could potentially be one of the best. That could potentially be the best midfield in the league. Kante, Mount, and Havertz.
Kante, Mount, and Havertz. Yeah, that's a really good midfield. So, yeah, what a great week of football. I do think if we look back to last week's episode, do you think our predictions for the top 6 now look like they need amending in the first week that we say it?
It's interesting because I am having second thoughts about City winning the league, really.
Roll the clip back where I say Liverpool are going to win the league from last week. It could be any 3 of them. I'd actually put City in my 3rd place if I was picking it by myself. And I'd put Chelsea 2nd, Liverpool 1st. But just. Yeah, I think Man City, I mean, don't get me wrong, they could recover. They've got unbelievable players and they've spent a lot of money this transfer. But I think Liverpool just look like they're powering. They're going to be very, very difficult to stop.
Yeah, I mean, the signings they made, I don't think the signings were confirmed. Maybe it was only Thiago, but Diogo Jota, is it pronounced?
Wow, he scored a great goal, yeah.
He scored a goal, didn't he? Arsenal match. So that's a game changer. The only concern would be, I think if Van Dijk got injured, Liverpool have got no chance.
I'm going to give us a get out of jail card, I'm going to say we can redo the top 6 at October the 4th or whenever the deadline transfer finishes. And we'll do a transfer deadline F is for football bonus episode. We'll do a transfer review of the top 6 and we'll do a final top 6. And let's get some comments in. Viewers, were we right? Were we wrong? What's your top 6? Give us comments.
We'd love to hear your top 6.
We want to hear your top 6. All right. Alright folks, that's it. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. As always, please like, share and subscribe. Find our sources in the description. Engage with our social media. We've been your hosts, F&S. Thank you and goodbye.